Okay, thanks for attending. We're assuming that you all are here because you have some important questions or concerns about your child or a child that you know. So we're hopeful that this presentation will at least get you some information, hopefully answers to the questions that you have. My name is Chris Murray. I am the director of the Center on Human Development here at the University of Oregon. And we're really fortunate to have Catherine Lang, Dr. Catherine Lang, joining us from the Eugene 4J School District, where she serves as the Director of Student Services. And one thing I wanted to mention is, Catherine works for 4J. So, she has a lot of experience, so hopefully she can answer the questions you have, even if you're outside of that district. But, you have to recognize that mainly she works for a specific school district and is best equipped to answer questions related to that particular district. So the way we set this up is Dr. Lang's going to go through a presentation, and we have this set up so that you all can answer, or you all can ask questions in a chat box. You can write in your questions in the chat box, and then we're going to stop periodically and we'll ask those questions. We'll ask Dr. Lang those questions. And at the end of the presentation, we are going to put in a little evaluation. The Center on Human Development is mainly funded through federal grants, and doing an evaluation helps us with our funders so we can keep offering different activities like this. So that evaluation will go in the chat box at the end, and we're hoping that you'll all stick around and finish it. It's a very brief evaluation, probably 3 minutes tops. So without further ado, welcome Dr. Lang, and thank you for doing this. And thank you all for joining us.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I appreciate everybody joining us, and I really appreciate Chris and the department for putting this on and asking me to be a part of this wonderful experience. I always love opportunities to partner with our community resources. So I know that we don't have a ton of time together, and I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I definitely probably will not have all of the answers, but I'll do the best I can to guide you through some pretty basic stuff and some things that you can do to get your kindergartner ready for kindergarten, and then we'll answer some specific questions. And obviously, if I don't know the answers to that, I can get back in touch with you. So if you guys want to, Chris, you want to move to the next slide? So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself, not that anybody really cares, but I have been in education for, this will be my 30th year actually, and I have been a special education teacher. I've been a principal and a director in both here and in Colorado. So I've been in education. It's all I've ever done my whole entire life since I was right after I graduated from college. So and special education is just really is my passion. I love students with all kinds of needs, but special education has always had a special place in my heart. And even after being a principal, which I also thoroughly enjoyed, I just really missed working solely with that special education population. So I went back to be a student services director when I moved to Eugene. This is my 4th year here. So one of the things that's really important that I share with families is one of my main priorities and one of the goals that I'm really working on with 4J, just because that's where I am right now, but I work on it, talking at the state level and things like that, is really about inclusive education and the importance of including all of our students and general education opportunities and making sure that they're around age-appropriate peers and just have the best opportunity possible to be as well-rounded as they possibly can as they grow and turn into young adults and then later adults who are living on their own. So inclusive education is really important to me. So it's always good to know that about me, because sometimes you'll hear me talking and I talk a lot about that, or I'll allude to that. So just thought I'd share that little bit of tidbit of information with you. And like Chris said, this is my 4th year in Eugene 4J. It's only my 2nd year as a director, so it's been kind of a wild ride. My first year with COVID hitting in March, as I was the administrator in the student services department. I oversaw all the high school programs. So I helped a lot with high school and transition age students for 2 years, and then moved into this position last year. And again, it's been a little crazy because, we're doing education different than we've ever done it before, but I'm living and learning, and love having involvement with parents to help us as we move forward and trying to figure out how to steer this vessel as we go into fall with COVID still here. So, okay, next slide, Chris. So some of the topics we're going to talk about tonight, and as Chris said, we'll take a little break in between each of these topics so that we can answer specific questions that might be related to that. And then we'll have a little time at the end, hopefully, for general questions and answers, or to circle back if you have questions about something that you thought of later. But some of the things we're going to talk about are tips for transition. So just some things that you can be doing with your child as you get ready to transition to kindergarten, which even if we were in brick and mortar would be a big transition for kids, going from preschool or maybe no preschool experience into kindergarten. And what does that look like? And especially now with everything looking very different, they're not actually going to school. They're going to be at school doing what we're doing right now, which is always a very strange way to deliver presentations or do anything. So we'll talk a little bit about some tips for that, and some home routines to help support learning. So that's a real important part of getting our students set up for success. And then if you have concerns for your child during distance learning, what's kind of the flow chart of and the progression of who do you reach out to and how do you get the help that you need for your child. And then our hope is that at some point in time, we'll be back to brick and mortar, at least a hybrid model where we're doing some online learning and some face-to-face. So what do the levels of supports in schools look like? So you kind of know what to expect as you make that transition. Okay, next slide. So just some tips for transition. As I said, going into kindergarten for any kid is hard, even if they've been in preschool and even if they're very excited about it. It's a very hard transition for students. You see lots of kindergarten age kids, clinging to mom's leg as you drop them off on that first day of school. And it's just as hard for the parents to say goodbye and walk away as it is for the kids. So now it's going to be a little different because we're not in brick and mortar, but it's still very important to get the kids ready to understand what kindergarten's all about. So a lot of this information, just so you know, and I can give kudos to some of my staff, I worked with some of our teachers to make sure that I was kind of covering. I'm not a kindergarten teacher, so I know a lot about transitioning our kids, but I don't know near as much as the teachers do because they're the ones who live it every day. So I actually worked over the last couple of weeks with several teachers to get some of this information so that I could make sure it was very pertinent to what they needed and what they could do to help you guys as parents. So some of that is really spending some time talking to your child about how school will look different than usual. And this may be your first child going to school, so you don't really even know what school looks like. But kind of go back to the days of when you were in school, or if you have someone else that was in school. Like I said, the drop off is usually really hard. Long days of 6-7 hours in school, where some kindergarten kids are still taking naps in the middle of the day. So it'll look a little different now because the schedules for our students will look a little bit different, and they won't have to have quite the stamina to get through a full day on campus, but they will have to have the stamina to be paying attention on Zoom classes for small little chunks and periods of times. Our teachers are smart. They're not going to sit down and have you have a kindergartner sitting for 60 minutes on a Zoom or a Seesaw session, because Seesaw is the platform that we use. But they're still going to have to maintain some stamina, and it's going to be very hard because at home they're used to kind of going around and doing what they need to do and kind of having freedom to roam, and they're going to need to learn to kind of pay attention and increase their stamina to be able to sit for long periods of time in front of a computer and not play video games or not play games, because that's not what it's going to be about. So kind of teaching them about what it's going to look like and what the expectations are. setting up a place for your child to use as a workspace, and identifying that as a workspace. So making that different than like where they play blocks or where they go read their books or, do puzzles or whatever it is you do as a family. It'd be really important to designate a workspace for them and call it that. This is where you do your work. This is where you do your class, and then have them decorate it and put work supplies in a space. So, whatever you think they might need, pencil, paper, your teachers will guide you guys a little bit on some things that they need, because they might want dry noodles to do counting and things like that. So you can decorate your space and have people set up, or have your child kind of set up a cool space for themselves and decorate it like they would like. One of the most important things, and once you get it, because you don't have that right now, but your teachers will help walk you through kind of what a schedule of the day looks like. And posting a schedule for your children to see is really important. So right next to where the computer is, or right over the top of the computer, if they can see kind of how their day is going, and they may not be able to read yet, so visuals are always good, printing cute pictures off of the internet or something like that to kind of match with what's happening during that time, or a drawing or something like that. I'm not a good drawer and I'm not a good artist, but I can do stick figures, and that's still great. So some kind of a schedule and a visual to go with it, so that the kids kind of know what their day looks like. And then you can always refer back to it. If they're getting tired or cranky, or they're feeling like they don't have the stamina to do that, you can kind of show them, like, here's where we are in our day, here's what we have to do next, and then we have a break. So visual schedules are really important. It's important for you as a parent too, especially at the beginning, to maybe spend a little bit of time in the actual classroom setting with your child, so that you can get to know the teacher and the students in their class, not on a personal level, and not like you're going to get to know all of them, but it's nice for you to be able to put a name and face together with students. A lot of times we'll have like a kindergarten roundup or an orientation or a class visit, and you'll get to kind of see other parents, and you'll get to see the kids, and then you can put names and faces. So when your child is talking about Joey, oh yeah, Joey, I remember him, and you kind of have some kind of a connection. So spending a little bit of time at the beginning, introducing yourselves to the teacher, and I'm sure the teachers are going to be setting up some kind of orientations as well, but just that's important so that you can have some conversation with your child about their classmates. Talking to your child about the day at the end of the day. So what was your favorite part? Who did you see today? What are some of the things that you learned today? Those are typical questions that we ask when you pick up your kid from school, or they get off the bus at the end of the day, or you come home from work at the end of the day. So just because you're home, some of you may be home with them all day, don't forget that that's an important part of kind of processing through the day, and remembering that you're interested in what they did. Just because you're home, and maybe even if you're sitting right next to them, doesn't mean that those aren't really great questions to continue to ask, so that it kind of helps the kids process, and it gives them opportunities to learn how to ask, like you're asking questions, they're taking time to respond, and there's kind of a processing piece. So next slide, Chris. So more transition tips, kind of having them practice some waiting when they ask for help with something. So if they need something and they ask for something, practicing wait time, because just think about a kindergarten teacher in a classroom with 23 kindergartners, and everybody's all little kids always call me Miss Cat. So Miss Cat, I need you. So practicing that at home, that they have to wait and be patient, is really important. So if they're asking for something, not to respond immediately, help them understand that sometimes they're going to need to wait for a question to be answered, or to get help from someone. Let them explore and make mistakes. Part of learning is making mistakes. We all fail sometimes, and we all make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes those are our best learning lessons that we have. So giving them an opportunity to explore with things. When they're at school, they have opportunities to work very independently sometimes and make mistakes, and teachers have a knack for helping help them correct those mistakes without calling out mistakes. So just not sitting over them and saying, trying to get them to do everything perfect is important. You're going to be there, you're going to see more of the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis than you usually do. So just remembering that sometimes they're going to make mistakes, and they need an opportunity to explore and make those mistakes. Practicing transitioning from one activity to the next within a time period, like setting a timer, would be really important to help them get ready for when we go back to brick and mortar. I remember when my daughters, who are now both in their 20s, were in kindergarten or even just young, and it was, to get out the door was a 30-minute process, because it was like, find your shoes, and don't forget your bag, and don't forget this, and all that kind of stuff. When you're at school, there's a very minimal amount of time in between transitions, and teachers use timers or music, things like that all the time to help with that transition time. So as you have that visual schedule posted, and there's little breaks in between, setting a timer or playing some music or something like that, and letting them know when the music stops or when the timer goes off, we're going to be needing to sit back down in our chair and be ready to work, or we're going to be needing to be ready to, have this materials out and ready to go for our next class, would be very helpful. Giving some time limits to certain activities. So setting up a schedule at home and giving them some time limits. And this doesn't even have to do with school. So say you're even doing a puzzle at home, or you're playing a game, or you're reading books, maybe setting a time limit, because in kindergarten, and again, I'm talking about kind of when we go back to brick and mortar, it'll look a little different, but they might have a free period, like a free time, a 10-minute little free period, or 5-minute little free time, where they can free read, or they can go play in the dress up section of the classroom and things like that. And those are all timed, and it's not when you finish the puzzle, or when you finish the book, or when you feel like you're ready to leave the play center. It is, you have 5 minutes. So any kind of activities that you can set up at home, where you're saying, we're going to do this for 10 minutes, or we're going to do this for 8 minutes, or whatever, and set a timer or something, is really helpful for helping them with that transition. Practicing waiting and giving people think time. So of course, when you're 5, you want everything, and you want it now, and you want answers now, and you want people to respond to you now. Again, kind of talking about giving wait time for helping with something, even if they ask a question, and because that's going to happen a lot in kindergarten. They ask lots of questions, and people need think time. So reminding them that, hey, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a minute, and I'll get right back to you. And just have them practicing that kind of thing, because when you have 23 kindergartners, and even in a Zoom, when you have 23 kindergartners on at a time, there's lots of questions, there's lots of curiosity. So everybody needs a little bit of time they have to figure out how to wait, and they also have to figure out how to give a little wait time and think time for people when they're trying to process questions. And one of the things that we use a lot, a language that we use a lot, or teachers use a lot, is first, then next, or first, it's usually first, then next is usually the most common that they use. So setting up activities where a kid does something first, and so they know, like, first you're going to do this, then you can do this, and next we'll do this. And that might end up in some kind of a reward. So maybe they get to read a book, or they get to have a couple minutes of playtime on a video game or an iPad game that you have, or something like that. So setting up things like that even at home. So it might be, well, first you need to pick up your toys off of the floor. Then I want you to take them all upstairs to your room. Next, we'll get together and have a little bit of free read time, or time on the iPad, or something like that. So we do a lot of things with that kind of routine. It teaches your kids how to kind of do things in progression, and also helps with their memory of more than one step direction. So multi-step directions. So at 5, a lot of times you can tell your kid one thing, like, go get your shoes. Okay, go get your lunchbox, go get your backpack. Like, it's one step directions. One of the things that we really work hard on in kindergarten is that those multi-step directions. So these are the things that I need you to do. And if you're creative, and teachers can help you with this too, if you want to set something up at home. So don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. But in school, we use first, then next charts a lot, with little icons that'll show, first I want you to pick up your toys, then I want you to take them upstairs. So it'd be like a little picture of stairs. And then you'd have like a book for reading, or an iPad for a game, or something like that. So visuals are always very helpful. We use a lot of those boards. I'm not asking you guys to go out and create a whole bunch of stuff and have a classroom like a kindergarten, but those are just some of the things that we'll use. But even just using the language is very helpful, because we use that a lot in elementary school. Once we get to,
Can
Yep.
I ask you a question really
Yep.
quickly?
Sure.
I just realized that if people have questions, they don't have the option to ask them to everyone. So please direct questions to me, Christopher Murray. Okay. Sorry, Kat.
No problem. That's a good to know. Once in brick and mortar, we can, and I'm happy to do another one of these if we shift and start moving to brick and mortar, so we can know how to get ready for that. But some of the important things are going to do are going to be to really show your student around the school with you. And I'm sure that schools will be probably checking, doing some open houses or some orientation so that your child can become familiar with the school, because it's frightening as it is. But if we're doing this distance learning for a long time, and then all of a sudden we're kind of changing on the drop of a dime, and all of a sudden they have to go to school the next week or 2 weeks later, giving them an opportunity to get familiar with the school, see where they're going, see what the inside of the school looks like. And again, I'm sure we'll set those up through the school district. And one of the things that's the hardest, and I remember these days because it was hard for me too, is just making sure that when you drop your kid off and to school, that you leave and you don't hang out. and that's really hard to do, because sometimes they're crying, sometimes they want you, sometimes they're scared. It's a horrible feeling. I remember as a principal of an elementary school, sometimes having to peel the kids off of their mom's purse as they, the mom tried to leave, or their dad's leg or whatever. So we have great teachers who will coddle your kids, and they'll take care of them, and we'll make sure that we love them and give them all the attention that they need. So, but the more you hang around, and I'm sure some of you've experienced this in preschool, the more you hang around, the harder it is for the kids to say goodbye and get into the routine. Because 9 times out of 10, once you turn around and walk away, those kids are laughing and playing and having a great time with other classmates. So, but we can talk more about that when we get to that point. So I think you can go to the next slide, but I think that was it for transition. Yep. So do we want to take a quick break and see if there's any questions about transition?
I don't have, I received 2 questions before the meeting started. We received 2 questions, and they are, related. So one of the questions was, what's the best strategy to ensure that the services a child is receiving will follow them during the transition to kindergarten? So I guess from early childhood into kindergarten.
Yeah. So if you haven't already had an IEP meeting to kind of set up your child's IEP, you will have one shortly after school starts. So it's very different situation right now. We're pretty much, even if you had an IEP, and I know some of you may have had an IEP meeting over the summer, to go off of an IFSP and move that to an IEP. We will be contacting you to have another meeting, and it might not be a full-blown IEP meeting. It might just be, here's kind of how your services are going to look right now, now that we're not in brick and mortar. If it's a full IEP change, so if something needs to change in your IEP, like some service that you're getting, or something's going to look drastically different, we'll have to have an IEP team meeting and redo the IEP. And all those services are obviously IEP team decisions. So that would be something that you would be a part of to make the decision on what the new IEP might look like, just because distance learning is different. If the IEP that was written can be followed as is, your case manager will probably be reaching out to you to say, hey, I'm looking at Kelly's IEP, and here's what it says, and I want to just give you a little brief update on what that's going to look like during this time. So I know for many of you, you might have related service providers, so like speech language or occupational therapy and all of those kind of things. So knowing that all of that will look a little bit different, the special education teacher, your case manager, who is your child will be assigned to, will be able to kind of walk you through exactly how all of your services will look. So that know that those services are going to continue to move forward. They may look a little different than they did in the brick and mortar, but those services are going to still continue. And also understand that our case managers sometimes have between 30 and 40 kids on their on their caseload. So if you don't hear something by September 15th, I mean, they just got back today. Today was their first day. And I know I'm getting ready to meet with them on Thursday to talk about next steps and starting to look through IEPs and make sure services are looking good and connect with families. But just know if you haven't heard something by September 14th or September 15th, that doesn't mean we've forgotten about your child or the IEP isn't in place or the services aren't in place. It just means that our case managers are, I mean, they're working all day. They're teaching, they're holding classes, they're collaborating with our general education teachers. And they'll be calling, I'm sure, after hours, but it's going to take a little while for them to get through their caseload. So just that IEP follows them, and those services will continue to follow them. Again, it's going to look a little bit different. So instead of having a small group pull out speech language in a building, your speech language person might be doing a small group pull out with a small group or one-on-one with your child, or they may actually be jumping into a seesaw class with your teacher and actually doing some direct services through the seesaw class with your general education teacher. So that's going to look different for every single student, since IEPs are individualized, but your case manager will be reaching out to you. So just rest assured that those services will continue.
Okay.
Anything else?
Great. And I haven't received any questions tonight in this chat box. So
Okay.
just a reminder to people that the chat, it's on the bottom of your screen, and I think it would look like a quotation box at the bottom of your screen. And then you would select Chris Murray if you want to ask a question. Okay, Alexis Reed has said that she has a question, but she has not asked the question. So why don't you type the question? Is it too much? Okay, we'll work on that, but hopefully other people, if they have any questions, you can just ask them there.
Yeah.
And,
okay, should we continue on, and then we can get to Alexis's question after this little piece?
Good. That sounds
Okay.
good.
So just talking a little bit, obviously your kids are going to be at home, which is different, or some of them may be in childcare, and we can address that. I'm sure some of you probably have some questions about if your child is going to be in childcare during the day. So we can talk about that a little later if you guys want to. But regardless, they're going to need a home. They're going to be coming home and doing work at some point in time. So some of the things that really help support learning, and again, these are some great ideas that I got from some of my special ed kindergarten teachers and some general education kindergarten teachers, is working on some phonemic awareness with games or fun activities. So as you know, there's all kinds of games out there, and I'm sure you play them with your kids. There's games on computers, there's, board games, there's all kind of stuff. But even just simple things like when you're eating dinner at night, when you're eating, let's just say you're eating ham, just really talking about, ham. What does ham start with, and sounding it out and saying like, am, and then helping them kind of start to see that there's letters and sounds and all of that kind of stuff, which many of you may already work with your kids on that. And just reading in general, obviously, helps with that. But really breaking it down with that phonemic awareness, like this is the letter H, and the letter H makes a sound, ham starts with an H. Just, make it fun, make it exciting. Don't make it like a learning lesson, like you're sitting down and you're drilling them on, the letter sounds, but make it fun and just part of the routine that you do. Playing games, like I said, match, word games, letter number identification, as you're driving down the street and you see a sign that has specific letters or has numbers on it or a picture of something, talking about it, pointing it out. What does that start with? That kind of stuff. Using household items to teach counting and reading and all kinds of stuff. So there's your teachers will probably encourage you to use a lot of household items. They might say, hey, for our lesson this week, we need, dry noodles, or we need, I don't even know what all they use. Dry noodles is something that just came to my mind, but, dry beans or whatever. And we're going to use those for counting. So you can do, and I think I have this somewhere down here, but, a baking sheet with shaving cream or Cool Whip or anything like that, or Jello or anything like that, that where kids can like write letters and numbers and draw shapes and do things like that. So household items are amazing. They don't cost near as much as it does to go out and get other types of manipulatives that you pay a fortune for. And they do the same thing. So using those kind of household items to teach fun things. Again, I think we already talked about creating visual schedule. So what does your day look like? You could also chart goals, like help your child kind of create a goal for themselves. You know, by the end of the week, I want to do this, or in 2 weeks, I want to learn how to do X, Y, and Z. You know, create a goal and then maybe have a celebration when they meet that goal. So maybe that's like a special dessert for dinner, or they get to pick the dessert, or they get to pick what they're going to have for dinner tomorrow night, or something like that, some kind of celebration when they've met their goals for the week, especially if students are really struggling with something. And, you know, for kindergartners, most of the time school is fun, but this is going to be a different learning environment and it's going to be hard. So if they're really struggling with just maintaining the stamina to sit in a Zoom classroom and listen and focus and sit still and do the things that they need to do, creating small goals with them would be helpful. And it might even be that they don't sit for the full, let's say it's a 20-minute block of time that the teacher's teaching. Maybe it's not sitting for the full 20 minutes. Maybe their goal for the week is to sit for 10 minutes and you've set that timer, and when they get to 10 minutes, you have some kind of a celebration. You know, let them know that the goal that they've achieved is hard, and it's important. It's going to be hard for these kids to learn. I mean, it's hard for them to learn to sit in the classroom in a chair and a table, and it's going to be really hard when they're at home. So any kind of goals that you can set or any kind of celebrations and it doesn't have to be a big celebration. Like I said, they get to pick what's for dinner on Friday night or whatever. Not a big deal. I already said that. So as most of you probably remember, to back in the day, we always had like classroom jobs that we did. So one might be the leader of the classroom line, one might be the caboose, one might be handing out all the papers, one might be taking attendance, one might be, you know, organizing something. So giving jobs around the house would be really important. It's such a big part of what they do in kindergarten to teach leadership skills and responsibility. And everybody has a job all the time. So, and usually every week, those jobs change. So if you could assign some like house jobs to do, you're responsible for taking out the silverware and putting it on the table, or putting napkins at the table for dinner tonight, or, you know, picking up the shoes up from the front door and putting them in the basket, or something like that. Like something that's their job would be really helpful, because that is it helps them have this sense of importance. It's such a big deal in kindergarten, and kids get so excited about it. They probably won't be as excited about picking up the shoes from the front door as they are about being the line leader. But you could also probably make some creative home jobs that might be a little bit of fun as well. Watering the plants, you know, whatever, taking out the trash. I don't know, anything that you think is appropriate. But giving them little jobs is really an important part of what we do in kindergarten. Practice sitting for story time and read to them. So I know a lot of times we, as parents, we read to our kids at bedtime. So we sit next to them in bed and cuddle with them in bed, which is amazing. And don't stop that, please. That's amazing. And it's a great time for you and your kid to bond. But also maybe structure throughout the day, or at least a couple times a week, where you're actually sitting maybe at their desk area and you're in a chair near them and you're reading to them. Or maybe you're reading to them and then they're reading to you. Even if they're not reading the words, sometimes making up a story about the picture on the page. That's early learning, early reading signs, when they can see a picture and they can make up a story about it. So, but doing it in a different environment than always in bed at night reading, or cuddling up on the couch, or whatever you do. Again, don't stop doing that, because that's super important, but structuring a little bit of reading time is also good. Practice taking turns. So that can be done during playing games or any other activities, but definitely practicing taking turns, because especially if they don't have any brothers and sisters yet, or haven't really been exposed to a whole lot of taking turns with game playing and things like that. All of a sudden they're in a classroom with several other students and they have to learn to take turns pretty fast. So taking turns is good. And just playing lots of music, using song and dance to learn. YouTube has endless amounts of songs, learning the ABCs, learning how to read, learning how to count, learning how to do all kinds of stuff. So YouTube has fun songs and videos, and they have yoga for kids where they're, doing yoga, but they're learning their ABCs and they're learning the CH sound in different yoga poses that they do. I mean, there's all kinds of fun ways to keep learning fun. So don't take the fun out of learning, and use things that have already been created from YouTube because they're amazing and it's free. Next slide.
Kat, I have one question.
Sure.
A quick one. And this is really about like monitoring progress. So when students have learning challenges, are there any good strategies that parents can use or can parents learn about that will help them understand whether or not their child is on track? And obviously, like anything related to the teacher, giving them feedback is great.
Yeah.
But in addition to the teacher, is there anything else that parents can do to know about on track behavior?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously your teacher is going to kind of guide you, and especially your special education teacher. This is when a good relationship and conversations with your SPED teacher will come in handy. Because obviously a lot of times we're measuring growth based on norms. So what is the normal thing that, kindergartners should be doing in this time? Well, the one good thing about kindergarten is there is no normal, because everybody kind of progresses at their own rate. And some kids will come into kindergarten reading and knowing all kinds of stuff, and others don't even know their ABCs or don't have phonemic awareness. So really remembering that you want to measure growth for your child based on where your child is. So their IEP goals and things like that should be kind of talking about what is that next level of growth? What are we trying to get to? And so, say it's something as simple as, counting to, I don't even know, because maybe counting isn't even on an IEP at 5 years old anymore, shouldn't be, because they maybe haven't even started. But thinking about what it is, so kind of when we're talking about setting those goals for your kids, starting there, what is the goal that you want to work on? And then where are they at? And then you can just do daily activities that kind of keep measuring that growth. I think the hard part is going to be knowing if, let's just say we are practicing counting, just because I started there. Now my mind's there. So say that they can count to 5, and our goal is that we want them to count to 15. What's normal rate of growth for counting to 15? If it takes them 1 month, is that normal? If it takes them 3 months, is that normal? And there really is no normal. It's more saying, if you've been practicing and they're still at 1 through 5, and it's 3 months later, and you've been doing all kinds of activities, and your teacher's been doing activities, and you guys have been doing a lot, you're going to want to work with your special education teacher on, wow, is there some other strategy that I should be using at home? Is there something else that we can do that's a little bit different? Because it seems like it's taking them a long time to learn to count to 15. Again, it's very hard at 5 years old to say what a rate of growth, what's kind of an average rate of growth of kids, because trust me, I worked with a special ed kid. He was in 2nd grade and he could not read to save his life. We practiced reading. We did every kind of strategy intervention I could ever think of in my whole entire life. And one day he came to school and he was reading. He could read, not, 2nd grade level material, but he was reading like Cat in the Hat. And I thought, what happened overnight while he was asleep? Who came, like what fairy came and put some dust in his head, and all of a sudden he's a reader. But it just clicked. So we just kept trying. We never gave up. We kept persevering through. So just remembering that repetition and practice, it can be frustrating as can be, because you feel like, oh my gosh, we've been practicing this for forever. But sometimes that's just how long it takes for the brain to click, and that's okay. We'll keep trying, we'll keep working, we'll keep doing different interventions. So working with your special, it's hard for me to say, like, how do I know if your kid's progressing, or what should you do if you don't think your kid's progressing? But working with your special education teacher is going to kind of help you continue to move forward with some of those interventions, and change things around, to, if they're not working, or you're not feeling like things are progressing, they can help continue to give you intervention ideas. And they'll be doing it too, because your child will be having time with your special education teacher as well. They're not going to be just in general education. They'll be with your special education teacher for small group pull out or instruction of some sort. So they'll be getting some interventions as well. So talking to your sped teacher is probably going to be your best line of defense if you want to try to kind of find out what's going on with your kids specifically. Okay.
Is there something like that? Are you all planning something like that where you're going to have the teacher talking to parents more possibly than in the past, where since it's online, are teachers going to have like regular meetings with the parent and the child, like where the parent, the teacher might be doing a lot of what you're doing right now, giving the parents tips about things that they can work with their children on?
Yeah, so I'm not going to speak for general education because I don't know, and I don't want to put something on gen ed teachers that is not happening. I do know that both general education teachers and special education teachers will be holding office hours. So they'll be out, those are hours where either parents or kids can hop in. Like if a kid needs some extra help on something, which probably isn't going to be, it's probably not going to be your kindergartner. That happens more with like secondary students. Like they'll say, oh, here's office hours, I'm going to hop in and get some help with my Algebra 1 work. But I know in the spring, we had our special education teachers held office hours, and sometimes they would they would actually reach out to a parent and be like, hey, I really want Johnny to be on these office hours because I'm going to be reviewing X, Y, and Z. And then sometimes teachers would be reaching out to parents and be like, hey, can you hop in during these office hours because with Johnny or without Johnny, because I want to talk to you about a couple of things, and it would be really great if you and I could have a conversation around this. So, or I'm going to be meeting with a bunch of parents and I'm going to be talking about our next unit of study or what we're going to be doing and some ways that they can help support their kids. So there is more opportunity, I would say, and I'm not going to say daily, but I would definitely say weekly for you to have opportunities to speak with. Again, I know that the gen ed teachers have office hours. I just don't know how they structured those, to be honest. But I know our sped teachers did a little bit of both. They did office hours that included kids. They did office hours that included both kids and parents. And then they also did some office hours where sometimes they were talking alone. So asking your case manager specifically, hey, what does it look like if I need to have a conversation with you? Or I want to see kind of like, how do you feel if, what would I do if I wanted to kind of see how Johnny's progressing and see what's going on? Is there a better time to talk to you? How's that set up? All of them will have some kind of a routine for that, I guarantee you. And so I would say you probably have an opportunity, because usually that happens at like drop off and pick up in the morning at bus time, or if you drop your kids off, those kind of conversations happen a lot. So think of it as kind of like drop off and pick up time, but asking them, and I'm sure they'll probably share all that with you anyway. When they reach out to you, they'll probably say, here's my schedule, here's a great time to talk to you. But if they don't, just make sure you bring that up to them. Any other questions or? Okay. I'm just going to finish up with just a couple little home routines, really super simple here. Just practicing table manners, like eating and cleaning up in a certain amount of time. When they go to brick and mortar, lunch does not last for an hour. And they are responsible for cleaning up after themselves. So they have to take their trays, they have to dump their trash, they have to make sure that all their trash in their area is cleaned up. So any kind of things that you can do to practice that kind of stuff. And I'm not asking you to rush your kid through dinner and have them eat in 10 minutes. So I don't want anyone to think but there is, they don't get to sit there for an hour. And I remember when I was an elementary principal, sitting in the cafeteria sometimes for a very long period of time after, like with these kids who just ate slow, 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 slow. There's a little more motivation because recess is usually after lunch. So kids usually will eat pretty fast. And when they know they're going to be missing out on recess time if they don't get out there, but practicing some of those routines at home and definitely practicing cleaning up after themselves. So maybe taking their own plate into the kitchen and putting it on the counter, or those kind of things are really important. Do a lot outside. I mean, especially while the weather's nice before it gets cold outside, exploring nature, noticing the color of things. How many red flowers do you see? How many rocks do you see over here? Can we pick up rocks and count? I want to do a pile of 10 rocks. Let's get 10 rocks. And so anything outside, anything with nature is always important, and enjoying this beautiful Oregon weather while it lasts. So and then here's a link. I don't know the best way to go. Yeah, just a link down here. I don't know the best way to share that with everybody.
I was trying. That's why I messed up a little bit. So
That's okay. Don't worry.
I think I can. I think there's a way for us to do that. I'm going to see if Connor can do it.
Okay.
Basically, Connor, if you took the PowerPoint that I sent to you earlier and then copied that link and put it into the chat box, I think that would work.
Yep. Yeah, if you put it in the chat box, I think everybody should be able to grab it. And if not, I will put it, and I'll tell you more about this later, but I'll put it on our website, we have a frequently asked questions page. I can put it on there as well, and you can access it from our website. But this is a link to a bunch of social stories. So social stories are really important. It talks about all the things we just talked about, like taking turns, using your manners, being nice to your friends, taking turns, waiting for your teacher to answer your questions. These are all kinds of social stories that are really fun. So here's a link and these are all based on COVID. They're COVID-19 related stories. So you might want to take a peek through some of them and see if there's just some that might help with just some of getting your child ready for school and understanding COVID-19 and why school looks different and all that kind of stuff. So just a little fun link to share some things with you guys. So, okay. So we're moving on to the next topic. Do we have any questions that came up about home routines or anything? Okay. I have a feeling more questions will come up around this next couple stuff that we are going to be talking about. So obviously, and I don't know the audience I have here. I don't know how many of you have kindergartners who are on IFSPs or have changed over to IEPs or what have you. I'm assuming a lot of you. But even if you don't have one, and just say you're concerned about your child's progress, just kind of like the question that just came up a minute ago, like, hey, my kid's not progressing. I'm not really sure what's going on. I need to know what to do next. So the basic rule of thumb, because this happens a lot, and I'm the director of student services, and I get these random emails that will say, hey, my kid's not doing well in school, or in their class, or, I don't like what's happening, or I don't think what the services that my child is having are really helping them move forward. And I'm just going to direct you right back to this whole flow chart right here, because I don't know anything, and not that I don't want to know about your kid, because I'm super concerned, obviously, and I'm always there to support. But when I don't know anything, I always say, did you talk to your teacher? That's going to be my first thing that I always say. Did you talk to your teacher? So the first thing you want to do if you have any concerns is talk to the teacher. Now, obviously, you have two teachers a lot, because if you have an IEP, you're going to have a SPED teacher as well. The basic rule of thumb would be to talk to the gen ed teacher first, because that's where the bulk of your child's instruction is coming from, or should be coming from. Again, I'm an inclusive person, and I like for kids to be in gen ed as much as possible. So your teacher should be the person. So if your child's in kindergarten and they have Miss Nancy is should have the most information about your child. The second would be your SPED case manager. So whoever your special education teacher is, if you have direct questions about like your student's IEP or something that you don't feel like is going well in the IEP, skipping the teacher and going to the SPED case manager is perfectly all right, because your teacher is just going to say, well, that's a SPED related question based on their IEP. It might be best to go ask the special education teacher, or meet with both of them over Zoom is fine. You might want to go to your counselor. Say you're having some concerns about social, emotional, or behavioral kind of stuff. A counselor is always a good one to go to as well. I wouldn't say that that's always necessary, but it would depend on what your concerns were about. But definitely mental health, social, emotional kind of stuff. Your counselors have a lot of wonderful resources and things like that that they can really help you with. So. And the administrator in the building would be somebody to go to. So say you went to your teacher, you went to the SPED case manager, or you went to the counselor because it was social emotional, and you just really felt like you weren't getting any help or any support, or just didn't feel like anything was moving forward. The administrator in the building would be the next person that you would go to. So and you would say, hey, I've reached out to the teacher, I reached out to the case manager, I still don't feel like things are really going great. I think I need somebody else to intervene. And then your special education administrator is another level. And those are people who work in the Ed Center downtown. And if you're not from 4J, everybody has a little bit of a different structure, but that's how our structure works. I would say that this rule of thumb probably goes for every district, but your special education administrator sometimes play different roles in different districts. So, so your special education administrator, so depending on what area you live in and what region you live in, that's either going to be Tom Horn or Seth Fathlin, and you can get all that information on our website. But that's when things really aren't going well and you feel like maybe there's been a violation of your child's rights, or you just feel like nobody's listening to your special education concerns, then somebody there would get involved. I work very closely with the special education administrator, so usually they will keep me in the loop. And if I need to get involved, I will get involved, but that's kind of your first line of defense. So those are some of the things that you can do. Now, I know there's concerns about growth and progress monitoring and how do I know my kid is progressing and all of that kind of stuff. And again, these are all things that your special education teacher and your general education teacher can help walk you through. We do progress monitoring on a pretty consistent basis. There's different tools that we use, different ways that we're able to measure growth in our students. So I'm not gonna go into like a whole lot of detail about what those look like, because we have some district-wide assessments that we use, but we also have some basic assessments that some teachers use. And so it might look a little different in your school. So, but we do have some district-wide assessments. We have some summative and formative assessments, and some really, we use assessment can be like a little quick ticket out the door, which we're not going to be walking out a door, but we're going to be walking out of Zoom now. So like little tickets to make sure that kids are processing and things like that. And we use that all as part of our progress monitoring data to be able to say, well, here's where we were, here's where we are now, here's kind of where we want to be, what are the next steps to get there. So so talking to your special education teacher and your general education teacher about how do we know that my kid is progressing on this IEP goal, or how do I know my students learning at a rate that is a good rate. I'm not going to say average, because I don't even know what average looks like anymore, but at a good rate to keep them up with their learning. So, and every kid's different. Okay, do we have any questions about that? No? Okay. Next slide then. Okay, so once we're back, and even I kind of titled that's the slide that way, but realistically, even if we're not back, your kids have IEPs, or they have IFSPs that will turn into IEPs, and they have services. So we have, I'm going to talk a little bit about brick and mortar, just so for any of you who are unfamiliar with kind of how our programming is set up right now, then you'll have an idea. And then I'll talk a little bit about kind of what does it look like and what can you kind of expect with online. So once we're back, we do, level of service is child dependent. Everybody has every kid has different needs. So and all of that is determined by your IEP team. So your IEP team gets together, they decide what level of service your child needs, which really has a lot to do with, how many related service things do they need? Do they need speech? Do they need OT? Do they need an autism consultant to work with them? Do they have behavioral issues? Are they, do they have services because they have like a wheelchair, or, some other kind of like, I'm drawing a blank here now. It's what time? Almost 7 o'clock at night. It's been a long day, losing my words. But they might have crutches or things like that that need supportive equipment to help them travel in the buildings. What is the level of service that they need? And they might have feeding issues. They might have toileting issues. There's all kinds of things that we have to talk about and we have to think about. And then we have to decide what level of placement will give them the most support for the needs that they have. So that's all determined by an IEP team. And then we have some regional programs. So we have different programs depending on the placement decision that's made by the IEP team. All schools have a learning center level of placement, which is basically what we call it here in 4J. Everybody calls it something different. So if you're not from 4J, it might not be called a learning center. It might be called a support center, or it might be a learning services or something like that. But in 4J, we call it a learning center level of service. And really, if you're looking at federal codes, that's like 80% or to 100% in general education. So they might need a small reading group to catch up in reading. They might need to be pulled out for a math group. They might do everything in general education with just support with our special education teacher and our general education teachers collaborating together to help with accommodations and modifications to help that child succeed in that class. And then we have what we call our comprehensive learning centers, which are more of our regional programs. So those are not in every single school. They're only in a handful of schools. And they're just a little more intensive services. So your child may be, and your child's only in kindergarten, so they're not going to be 4 grade levels behind in reading. They're not, because they're not there yet. They're just learning to read. So, but their level of service and related services that they need might be a little more extensive, and they might need a little bit more support throughout the day. And so they might need a little bit more pull out, or they might need a little bit more time in intervention groups. So that's all determined by the IEP team, and they might be in a regional program. So what that basically means is if your home school does not have that program in it, we will be placing the location of where your child goes to school may be different than their home school. So I know that can be really confusing for parents sometimes, because they'll be coming out of preschool and say Howard Elementary is your home school. And well, Howard's a bad one because they have a CLC, but so they might be, but let's just say Howard's your home school, you register at Howard, and then all of a sudden we're saying, oh, well, your level of placement is this, the location is going to be, let's just say Buena Vista for whatever reason, then that's can be kind of confusing to parents. And that's because we don't have some of our levels of service in all of our buildings. One of my goals, and just being transparent, is that I'm trying to work on getting all of these levels of service into all of our schools. And that was something I was working really hard on. And then COVID hit, and then my whole life just went into a different direction. So, but something that I'm still working really hard on is trying to get a level of services in all of our schools, so that all kids can go to their home schools and don't have to go to a regional program somewhere. Our life skills programs, elementary, are run by 4J right now. We do have one classroom at Buena Vista that is life skills, that is run by Lane ESD. So if you do have a life skills level student that goes there to get their services, then that is run by the Lane ESD. Then in middle school, we have programs that are run by Lane ESD and 4J. And then once the kids get to high school and transition age, all of those students in life skill, all of those programs are run by our Lane ESD. So there are service district that runs the whole consortium, and they run those life skills programs. So again, kind of thinking about 4J future vision. I mean, I'm working really hard to get it to a point where we have more of these regional programs into all of our schools, because I know it's really hard when you're live in the Howard Elementary boundaries and all of the neighborhood kids are outside playing and getting to know each other. And then your kid has to go to another school, so they kind of have a separate set of friends than their neighborhood friends. That becomes very emotional for a lot of families, and it's very difficult. So that's something that we're working on. It's not happening tomorrow. I was hoping I'd be a little bit further in my work with that, but again, COVID kind of derailed us all, and now we're focusing on a lot of different things. So one of our biggest focuses right now is just trying to provide the best education possible for all of our students in a unprecedented times that none of us could have ever planned for. And there is no book, there is no manual, there is no nothing, just like there's no parenting handbook that was ever written. I wish there was, because I'd be a millionaire if I wrote it. But I'd be a millionaire if I wrote a COVID, how to do education in COVID right now. But there is no handbook. There's nothing to say how to do this and do it well. We're kind of building a plane and flying it at the same time. And I have to say we have a fantastic team. I can tell you a little bit about some of the work that we've done over the summer, and then I'll open it up to some questions. But we had work groups working all summer. I can tell you that not many teachers had a break this summer. We banded together, and a lot of people gave a lot of their time and energy on being parts of different work groups that were trying to figure out how to do education much better than we did in the spring, when we didn't have time to plan. We didn't have time to talk about what was going to happen. It just happened, and we had to shut down, and we were turning on a dime. So we've spent, I haven't taken a vacation day all summer. Again, I don't think there's very many teachers that took much vacation time. And we've worked on, not only from a special education perspective, but also from a general education standpoint of what are some of the most essential skills that we need for our kids to get. And one of the most important things that we know is just that caring and compassion and relationships with kids, because this relationship going through here is much different than when you're face to face and you can sit next to a kid and you can put your arm around them and say it's going to be okay, and you can help them and you can support them and you can see them in action. You learn a lot from kids by sitting, watching them learn, watching how they explore, watching how they start a project, how they finish a project, how they interact with other kids. And this isn't the same. So caring, compassion, and relationships are some of the things that we want, and social emotional growth and learning are some of the things we want to focus on the most. But we also know education is important. And if you have a student who's already starting on an IEP, who already has some difficulty or just some concerns that we've already noted early on, the good news is that we've noted it early on, and early intervention is always the best. But it's going to be different, and it's going to be hard. And I'm not going to say that we're going to be perfect, because we're not. And I'm not going to say that everything's going to be great. But I can tell you that we have some of the hardest working teachers. I can't tell you how touching it was for us to open up and say, hey, we're going to develop these. I think we had like 37 work groups working on different pieces of putting this all back together. And we just opened it up to teachers and said, we really would love your help. We understand it's summer, you deserve a break, you need a break. And we just had an overwhelming response of teachers who wanted to be part of these work groups to make sure that school was good this fall, and that we were welcoming to students and families, and that we're ready. So that's kind of where we are. I think that might be the last slide. I can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm here. We have a little bit of time, so I'm open for questions, or let me just tell you too, before we get too much further into the questions. We have on 4J's website. I don't know about other districts, but anybody can access 4J's website. We do have a list of frequently asked questions that are on there that you can access. So we're trying to kind of keep up, and a lot of them are just general education kind of things. What is their day going to look like? What's the routine? But your kids are gen ed. I mean, they're gen ed first. Special education is because they have some extra love and attention that they need to get where they need to be. So so all those general education questions apply to you guys as well, and to your children. And then there's a separate section that is for special education. So there's a little separate section that we just started. So it's pretty slim right now, but the more questions that come up and the more work that we do and the more things that we, and I haven't even been on, there it is. Yep, you got it. So it's right there. We're going to keep adding to that throughout the year. So checking in there frequently is a good idea. As more questions come up, we'll do the best we can to kind of keep that updated as often as possible. So I'll take good questions that you guys bring to me, or parents bring to me, and teachers bring to me, and I'll make sure that those are on there. So always checking in there is always good. But now I'm open for questions. So anything that you have.
I haven't received any. One question I was wondering, Kat, is can we, when we put in this evaluation, one thing I love about your presentation is all of the practical strategies that you had. You really have some great ideas for things to do at home. I have three young adults now, but I wish I did more of those things when they were in kindergarten. Is there a way for us to send out your PowerPoint? Can we send that to people when we do our evaluation? If they give us their email,
Mhm.
can we give them the PowerPoint?
Yeah. I mean, you have access to it, right? So you should be able to just send it if you have their emails, you should be able to just send it to them. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that
And
would be
then
great.
I did get a question. Do you have any tips for students, uh, young children that are having significant behavioral reactions to working online? So either ways to make it more fun, less scary, more engaging to, to try to help students that are having
Yeah.
maybe negative effects to working online.
So I am talking about kind of when we were talking about the schedule and creating some goals for the kids, because it is kind of scary and it is weird. It's weird to have I still think it's weird. And I'm an adult to have conversation and hold all these meetings, via Zoom. So, thinking about small steps and breaking that into really small steps about like what's a goal that we can work towards. Again, it might be 5 minutes of engaging and signing on into a class, and that's okay to start there. If I know that it's scary to think that your kid's losing out on this synchronous time, so the time that you're with your teacher when you're supposed to sign on and be going back and forth and learning. It's hard to think about missing that time, but we're going to be pushing out a lot of asynchronous material as well. So that's anything that you can access as a family later on. So you can watch it later, you can talk about it later, which might feel more safe for your kid, where they're not interacting with some strange teacher and a bunch of strange kids that they've never seen before. And your teacher has a lot of good tricks and things that they're going to be trying to do to engage kids as well. So they're pretty savvy at trying to hook kids in. So hopefully once your child kind of gets to meet their teacher, and like I said, set up that small little goal that, hey, if you can sit for 5 minutes or even start with 2 minutes, start with 1 minute if that's what it takes. And then have some kind of celebration. Like when we get up to 5 minutes of being able to sit in class and listen, then we'll have some kind of a celebration. And like I said, maybe that's a special dessert it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be sweets. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but something special that they get to do, trying to do that. If you're really, really struggling, work closely with your special education teacher. We have behavior consultants and autism consultants, and don't be afraid of that word. If your child isn't diagnosed with autism, they basically work on social emotional strategies and skills and all that kind of stuff. They have been super savvy about working with families on how to kind of break down some of those skills to help get your kids to engage, especially. It's a little hard. It's actually much harder with secondary kids, high school kids, trying to get them out of bed in the morning and get them to sign on. It's harder to motivate and entice them. It's much easier to do with little kids. So utilize some of the resources that your teachers have, and just ask them to say, hey, my kid is really afraid. I'm really worried. Be very honest and open with your teachers about your concerns and about what's happening at home with your child. Like, I can't get them to get on, I have the computer on, they're there, they're hiding under the chair, they're, crying in their room and they won't come out. Just be open and honest with your teachers. They can help guide you through some things. It might be nice to set up a one-on-one time where your teacher and your child, the teacher and your child have a little one-on-one time, so they don't feel so overwhelmed with the whole classroom experience. So they'll be willing to work through all of those kind of things. But we also have some, our behavior consultants and autism consultants are working on some social emotional stories that surround all of that, like, you know, how to interact. And I haven't seen that link. That's that link that they posted was given to me by a teacher for some social stories that she found that are related to COVID-19. I would scroll through there. There might be some social stories that might be able to help you. If not, I know that our behavior and autism consultants are putting together a whole bank of resources and social stories to help with just some of the things that you just talked about. Oh, there you go. So yeah, I haven't even had a chance to look at this. She just sent this to me the other day.
And
Yeah. So
someone on the meeting, M. Fleming, sent me an abbreviated link.
yeah, I saw that. So thank you.
There's an abbreviated link there to those social stories. And then Kelsey also put this evaluation up here for people that attended.
Yes, social stories are such a great way to help students kind of face their fears and ask questions or get answers to questions that they may be afraid to ask. Social stories are really powerful. And there's all kinds of fun ways to integrate those into things that you do. There's videos sometimes, there's all kinds of stuff out there, but work really close with if you're really having a hard time to get your kid to engage. And if you're having if it's impossible, like your kid's just not engaging, talk to the teacher about other ways that you can get the material. I don't expect you to become a homeschool teacher, mother, father, sister, brother, whatever you are, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. But we did have families in the spring that we did packets for they were having such a hard time, or for some students, it became a meltdown to be on the computer. It was a trigger for them, and they're used to being on computers to play video games and have fun, and to try to do learning was very hard for them. So we did packet work for some families. So there's different ways that we can make this happen without it being where you're fighting your child every day and you have blood, sweat, and tears happening every day. So, I mean, I think one of the most important things that you can do as a parent, and as I'm trying to also tell my teachers to do, is to just give yourself some grace, and knowing that this is, you're not a bad parent if you can't get your kid to participate. You're not a bad parent if your child has a hissy fit and tantrum because they don't want to participate and you've just decided to throw in the towel for the day. Give yourself some grace. This is different for everyone. Give your teachers some grace because they're trying really hard to make this happen. And, this is a time for grace and gratitude for all of us. Be thankful that we're all working hard, understand that we're all working hard, be thankful that you have your family close by and that people are healthy and all of that, and give each other grace to make mistakes and just keep trying. So this is hard. This is not easy. And we know that you're not home. I never signed on as a parent to be a homeschool person, and I would have never been able to do it because I was a teacher, but I wouldn't have had the patience to be at home with my own children doing it. So, give yourself some grace. We know that you're not teachers either. So we're doing the best we can to support you, and we understand, and we'll figure it out together as a team. We're a team to work together. So any other questions?
I think that's it. Dr. Lang, this has been very informative, and thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for doing this.
Absolutely.
And, just so everyone knows, I don't know if any parents are here that have a middle schooler, but we're doing a similar meeting next week for the transition between middle school and high school. So basically the 9th grade transition. And on our website, there's a posting and a link to that one at the Center on Human Development. Perhaps, Kelsey, you could just put our website link up there real quick for anyone that wants to go to that. You're totally welcome. That one's going to be Brian Meggert, who is basically the Springfield version of Dr. Lang.
Yeah, he's great. We work very closely together. High school transition is a hard one too, for sure. It's a big step in kids' life. So If you have a high schooler, I would definitely say tune in. I'm sure he's got some good ideas. Well, if you need anything, my contact information's on the website as well. Reach out to your teachers, your sped teachers. Just expect to hear from you'll hear from your general education teacher soon, very soon, because they'll be sending out schedules and kind of how the day will look. I'm sure they'll be communicating, but expect to hear from your special education teacher here in the near future as well to talk about services and what that will look like for the fall and discuss your child's IEP. So all that will be coming. Just again, a little grace as we're going to be trying to do this very fast, and they have caseloads of a lot of, they have heavy caseloads. So it might take a little bit of time, but know that they're going to get to you and they haven't forgotten about you. They have you. They'll take care of you, I promise.